Hi everyone, my name is Priya Balasubramanian. As Susan mentioned, I am the Associate Director for Translational Research Programs. I'm the newest member of the research team here. I only started about 4 months ago. This is my first FPWR conference and I'm really happy to be here. Really happy to learn more about all the science that's going on and happy to meet all of you guys. So since I came on board, I have been working on a number of very exciting projects here that Natalie and Teresa and Jessica have been working on in the past. And since Natalie and Teresa already covered a lot of ground, I kind of will keep it short. I want to tell you about one of the exciting programs that we have that I'm working on with Teresa. This is the clinical care program, and really what we're trying to do is to optimize existing therapies in the short term to improve quality of life for both patients and families. And I stole this slide from Natalie, but I think it's really important to show again, just to emphasize the fact that drug discovery from scratch really takes a lot of time, as Natalie explained, going through basic science research and then doing all the preclinical testing and all the phases of the clinical trials that Teresa talked about yesterday. This can take a lot of time, a lot of money. So what we're doing to get answers in the short term, in the next few years, is to really look at drugs that are already on the market and see if we can repurpose them for use in PWS, drugs, devices, alternative therapies. And our goals with this program are really to alleviate symptoms in the near term using therapies that already exist. And for this, we are also, our goal is to use a collaborative approach with scientists and parents, clinicians, to prioritize symptoms that are really important to the community, and to also figure out what therapies are out there and what can be used. And really, we want to have very targeted studies. We don't want to waste time. We want to have answers really fast, and we want to evaluate therapies that are existing and whether they can be repurposed for PWS. So the way that we are doing this is we have established a clinical care advisory board, and this board consists of physicians, health professionals, clinicians, parents. And we have developed a list of symptoms that are of immediate concern to the community that we really want to address right now. And some of these include behavioral problems, scoliosis, of course, hyperphagia, obesity, seizures, GI motility. This is not an exhaustive list, but just to give you some examples. And then what we're also doing is to evaluate for each symptom what therapies are out there and what can be applied to PWS. Of these, we would like to select clinical studies that are highly feasible and have a very rapid turnaround time, say 1 to 3 years. And really the benefits of using an approach like this is that it's very directed. We kind of know what questions we want answered, and we want to go out and find the answers. I said it's a collaborative approach. We're getting input from everybody that's involved in PWS research, and caregivers and clinicians and scientists. And we would like to really foster very straightforward studies and trials that can have answers, that give us answers very quickly. And I want to answer the GH question. Oh, I'm done with my part, but I just want to answer the GH question. Yes, that is on our list of symptoms, things that we want to address. For the GH, we actually, Teresa has been in touch with a company called Versartis. They make a long-acting GH. I think it's a once-a-week injection. Once-a-week injection for adults. And we have been trying to see if they might be interested in doing this with PWS. And I think we're going to try to get the GH from them, correct? To do
We're talking to them, and there are other options as well. As you might imagine, in a growth hormone trial, the real expense is the drug, and so we're looking at companies that might be willing to partner with us and provide the drug for that. Yeah.
But that is certainly on the list.
Yeah, so it's a high priority. My son's 23.
So if we're looking at drugs that are post-approval, I assume that there's a pretty well-defined list of drugs. So generally, how many products are you proposing to look at, or how big is the pool of things to
How
study?
big is the list? So I looked at this recently. For each symptom, I think we have maybe 5, 6 drugs per symptom that we might be looking at.
For total?
Total, I don't know, it's like 150 drugs, 150, 200.
We're at the
It's a lot.
big stage. We need to obviously we can't do 150 trials.
So we're
narrowing.
That's just the preliminary list that we have right now. We're going to try to narrow it down.
Okay. So is there a timeline for? Do you know how much you want to narrow it down to, and then a projection of how long it'll take to go through that narrowed list and how much money?
So right after the conference, our next step is to get input from parents on what symptoms they'd like to see us address. And then we kind of have developed like an algorithm. We're going to do a survey to see, there's various questions on the survey, what's the feasibility, how many people, how easy is it going to be to enroll people in clinical trials? Is the science really strong for a certain drug that we might want to consider? So we're going to take all these factors into account and really shorten that list.
And then is there another, not necessarily organization, but another effort that is using a similar approach to this, or is FPWR breaking ground in doing this model?
Not that I know of. Not that I know
I
of.
don't know. We just got a lot of feedback from parents who said, like, oh, this drug development is great, but I've seen that, 10-year timeline. It's not working for me. So I don't know if others are using it, but it's just really...
Yeah, there are other rare disease organizations that are using that also.
But our goal is to, so we've actually started one project, which is a mindfulness project for people with PWS to hopefully mitigate their temper outbursts, and we're working with Dr. Einfeld in Australia on that one. So that's one project. Then the adult growth hormone project is one that is clearly a tremendous need in our community. So that's a second priority, but it's going to be dependent on us getting drug from a company. And then our goal is to launch 3 projects in the next year addressing things like GI motility for prebiotics, probiotics kind of things, for example, once we prioritize the list.
Thank you.
Hi. So for me, another thing I learned, I didn't know about this aspect of using drugs that are already FDA approved. So my question is, from going back to the phase 1, the phase 2, the phase 3, if we're using drugs that are already approved, if we find out they work, is it like, bam, we use them already, or does it have to get approved again for certain things, or how does that work out?
So that is actually the big benefit of using this approach is when you have a drug that's already approved, it's gone through all of these phases. There's a ton of data on its safety and efficacy. So you really don't have to go back to doing all the phases of testing. So it really shortens the time to approval.
And, any drug that's on the market can be prescribed by a physician. So
yeah.
You may want to go back and get a disease-specific indication to help with insurance payment. But if we get literature, like out in the medical literature, that this drug works in PWS, then oftentimes that's enough for example, modafinil or Provigil is used by a lot of families. That was a drug that was approved for narcolepsy, but physicians can prescribe it for PWS. And if there's data out in the literature that it works in PWS, then they're going to be more likely to prescribe it. So going in and saying, my friend uses so-and-so, is different than saying, here's a paper that shows that this works in our disorder. So so the physician can then, that may support prescribing it.
I have two quick questions. How the repurposing of drugs, the Open Act, I guess, plays into that, correct?
Yes, yes.
And I don't know the status on that. And I guess it's not so much a question, but if we can all encourage our representatives in Congress to please support and pass it. And I don't know that it's
not passed.
Right.
So the Open Act is just for that, for repurposing drugs. It was part of 21st Century Cures, and it got dropped out because apparently 21st Century Cures would not have passed with that in it, because there's some in Congress who are really feeling like the pharmaceutical, are really advocating, have an issue with pharmaceutical companies, right? There's a little conflict there. But for the rare disease community, the Open Act is very important, and yes, I think...
So that's my plug. It's not really a question. Can you all please contact your congressman and tell them to support the Open Act? And
yeah, NORD is really pushing that. There's a foundation, the Every Life Foundation, that focuses on rare diseases and advancing drugs for rare diseases, and they're really pushing the Open Act as well.
And then just my question, and maybe it is kind of like similar to the Angelman question, and it's selfish. My little girl, it's hypotonia, is like crazy severe hypotonia, and I know that so many syndromes, hypotonia is a symptom. So is there room for collaboration with that, I guess? With symptoms that we're dealing with, like,
That's a great, so hypotonia is on our list of symptoms, and that's a great idea to sort of make perhaps it easier to do a clinical study if we include other groups with hypotonia. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.